What's up, upstanders? Dr. O here. And people have a lot of conversations about what are we going to do to take back this? What's the Democratic plan? Or what's the plan for people in America? So on and so forth to fight back and stuff. And one of the things that's extremely important is that we have to take control back of narrative and language. As it's often been said in politics, when you're using the language of your opponent, they are winning. You could have the best arguments ever, but if you're using their language, they are winning. And one of the challenges that we have, particularly as it relates to conversations around critical race theory, diversity education, diversity, equity, and inclusion, even Black Lives Matter, or terms that they've deemed useless, like woke, which is a term I've never used, never liked in the first place. People are debating over a narrative that people like Trump and DeSantis and these Republicans have created that was never true in the first place. And so what happens is you even have people who are not par, who may be in more liberal, quote unquote, progressive or democratic spaces, arguing over things using the language of the Republicans. Case in point, this I heard Mike Barnacle talking about Jackie Robinson wasn't a DEI hire, he was an American hero. Both two things can be true. Jackie Robinson was a diversity hire. Now, of course, he was brought into the to baseball because of the potential money that people saw from the Negro leagues and how that could translate into baseball. So that was all about economics and the like. But here's the thing. When Dr. King talked about in his letter from a Birmingham jail about how white liberals can be a bigger problem than the white racists that people are fighting. You see, a lot of white people in liberal spaces have issues with DEI as well because they don't fully understand what it means and they're against what they think it means in the first place. Now, some of them, if they actually knew what it means, will still be against it, but that's a conversation for another day. This is my point. Jackie Robinson, like many other baseball players, was qualified to play in the majors, but racism kept him out. Jackie Robinson, like many other black people who served in the military before him, had the talent, had the skills, but racism and segregation and discrimination kept them out. It wasn't that they were not skilled. It wasn't that they were not qualified. Racism said you could not be in those spaces. Part of diversity, equity, and inclusion, when you integrate a community, that's a DEI program. That's a DEI idea. When you desegregate the military, that's a diversity, equity, and inclusion program. There was never conversations about, well, we're going to let black people in, Asian people in, Latino people in of the lowest quality standards just so we can have some good numbers. That's not what happens with diversity, equity, and inclusion. But that's the perception out there that people took, random bro Pookie from the streets and made him a CEO at PepsiCo or something like that. And so you basically, that's when you have people who are quote unquote liberal, progressive, and all of that saying, well, this isn't DEI. This is Jackie Robinson's a hero. No, that's not how it works. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is about giving people an opportunity where the opportunities did not exist. Now, to be clear, are there some young people who may get into college and may not have the strongest scores and so on and so forth? Yes, that is true, but that happens across the board, across every racial group. That also happens with legacy admissions, where the kids of people who wrote a nice check to the university or whose parents are prominent and went there also get in, who also struggle in schools. But that's why many universities have pre-college programs. Georgetown University, where I graduated from, had a program called Community Scholars, where students would come in during the summertime before classes started. Some was to get additional academic support if the school they got in from was not the strongest, but for others it was just an opportunity to get acclimated to the college campus before everybody else got there. What is wrong with that? And as I said when I was on Dr. Phil, no matter what test you take to get in, you got to take the same test to get out. No matter what opportunity, whose parent wrote the check for and whose name's on the building you got to get in, you got to take the same test to get out. My wife and I are graduates of Boston Latin School, oldest public school in the country, founded in 1635, older than Harvard University. Lots of, basically is a very high functioning public school. It has been for years. It rivals many private schools, probably more than academically rigorous than many private schools that are out there. My wife, she graduated as a member of the National Honor Society, AP honors classes, all of that. I was class secretary and the like, and went to Georgetown, one of her top choices, and did the Community Scholars Program. Didn't need that for the academics. It was, hey, come get acclimated to the university before you start classes. And so if we want to be serious about fighting back this ignorance and hatred that's out there, we have to reclaim the language. I will never argue, I will never cede what the definition of diversity, equity, and inclusion means to those guys who basically use it as a slur. DEI hire, so on and so forth. And the fact of the matter is that most of Trump's cabinet are DEI hires. What does Linda McMahon know about the Department of Education? What does Pete Hegseth know about the Department of Defense? This is a man who fired somebody in CQ Brown, black member, head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and put in somebody less qualified. I believe CQ Brown, General Brown's 4-star, put in a 3-star general with limited experience. Head of the FBI, Kash Patel, and his deputy. Run down the list. Look at these individuals. These are and most of them are white males. Obviously, some of the ones I mentioned are not, but the real qualification for them is that they're white males. And I wouldn't even say white heterosexual males, because you still got Peter Thiel up in there doing his thing. So it's about power. What skills does Elon Musk bring to the table as it relates to running government? So even when I heard, Mara Gay, on MSNBC talking about, I'm tired of people calling it DEI. These are attacks on civil rights and civil liberties. Yes, that is true. But she was saying, DEI is a program. DEI is a program that you do at your job that you may not really like. No, that is a DEI program. But there's a difference between DEI program and DEI in general, the idea of it. So if we're talking about creating community where everybody can be celebrated and not tolerated, we have to take control back of this language. We have to take control back of this narrative. Remember when we had that tragic plane crash and helicopter crash over the Potomac, here in the D.C. area, and before people even knew anything, before people even knew anybody who was on board, Trump and all of these guys threw out DEI. Just DEI, DEI, DEI. And then it turns out they were all white, and I believe they were all white men. There was one white woman who was one of the pilots training on the helicopter, and her family had to wait days before they released her name so they can gather all of the stories and all of the affirmations from her former colleagues and staff and supervisors to show how qualified she was, because they knew that she was going to be a DEI hire person as a woman, and she was going to be blamed for that. The way that these Republican folks call it, I don't call them the right because they're wrong. The way that these people frame things like critical race theory, like Black Lives Matter, like the DEI, is absolutely wrong. They are not the creators of the terms, and they'll say things like DEI must die, and they'll change it to whatever they change it to on their websites and the like. They didn't come up with those terms. And so all y'all who are out there do work like I do in DEI spaces, you got to reclaim the word. All of y'all who aren't in these spaces but know what it means, gotta reclaim the word. All of y'all who know that DEI is also including things like, making sure that kids with disabilities are getting the help that they need in education in their schools. That's also part of DEI. Those who are making sure that, the elderly are not, just thrown out to the wolves as it relates to Social Security. That's about DEI as well, because it's about inclusivity. It's about inclusivity. It's about making sure that people who may need help getting better access to things actually get the access that they need. Now with Jackie Robinson, if we had a country that was actually built on meritocracy, which it never was, would it need any DEI programs for the military, for baseball, for anything else? But the fact of the matter is that this country was built on white maleness. And it was built on white maleness that excluded everybody else, their qualifications be damned. And so Jackie Robinson is an American hero, but he is a product of DEI programs. When you integrate something, that's a DEI program, whether you like it or not. It's a program to diversify. It's a program, equity, helping somebody get access to something they didn't have access to before so they can get to a particular goal. Inclusion. Now, Dr. King said that true integration, which is not part of the term DEI, is about the marriage and the sharing of power, resources, and responsibility. That hasn't fully happened in any level in this country, in corporate spaces, education spaces, and the like. So my call to everybody, and I talk about a lot of this. I have a whole chapter on racialized language in my book here, Lies About Black People, which I strongly encourage you to get wherever you get your books, audiobooks as well. Do not give in on language. When they say DEI, make them say diversity, equity, and inclusion. Make them say specifically which part they're against, the diversity, the equity, or the inclusion, and make them say why. And then when they give out their ignorance and their nonsense on this, actually challenge them with the members of the Trump administration who don't have the skills that they need to lead, starting with the president himself. Have that conversation. Speak on it. Take back your language. Take back our language. Stop using Republican narratives to frame the story and build your arguments from there. We are the educators. When I say we, I don't mean people like me who are professors, of course. I'm just talking about those who know the history, those who can actually talk about Derek Bell and Kimberly Crenshaw when it comes to things like critical race theory and Delgado and the other founders of it. Those of us who understand that critical race theory isn't even taught in K-12 schools and isn't even taught in college except for as a law school graduate course. We got to share that. We got to put that out there. We got to put an end to these trigger words that are used to get people on our side who would normally be on our side if they didn't fall for that Republican nonsense. So look it up, read it up, search it up, whatever you want to say. But stop using their language as you frame your arguments. Use the language as it's meant to be and take back the language of diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as now people often say DEIA, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and accessibility, because that also talks about inclusion, relating to people who have physical challenges and other maybe mental challenges, mental illness, and so on and so forth. Some have also added belonging. Some have also added justice. Whatever it is, the roots are the same. The roots are the same. Diversity, the state of being different, there's nothing wrong with that. That's what this country was built on. So get out there, claim it, name it, own it, and don't for a second use the way they define our terminology in the arguments that you're making in support or against DEI, but hopefully the goal is in support of it. Look forward to your thoughts. Let me know what you think in the chat. Holla at your boy. I want to hear your comments. Let's have this discussion. Peace.